You know that feeling when you're around someone, and no matter how calm you try to stay, they somehow find a way to get under your skin. It's like they've got a map of every button you have, and they push it over and over until you walk away drained, frustrated, and wondering if it's you. And the worst part, you replay the conversation later, wishing you'd handled it differently, but also knowing this isn't the first time it's happened, and it won't be the last. This isn't about winning an argument or proving a point. This is about protecting your peace in a way that doesn't require yelling, explaining, or even getting them to understand you, because they don't have to. Once you make this shift, you'll stop giving them the reaction they're looking for, and you'll start getting something you haven't felt in a long time: control over your own space, no matter who's standing in front of you. Most people don't talk about it, but dealing with toxic people can feel like you're trapped in a loop you can't get out of. You start to question yourself, your reactions, your words, even your worth, because somehow every interaction leaves you a little more worn down than before. It's confusing because part of you hopes they'll change, while another part knows they probably won't. And in the middle of all that, you're just trying to hold on to your own peace without feeling guilty for it. This isn't about building walls or cutting everyone out. It's about learning one simple shift that stops their chaos from becoming yours, so you can walk away from any conversation with your confidence and calm intact. When their words keep getting to you, it's not always because of what they're saying in that moment. A lot of times, it's because those words hit something deeper, an old wound, a memory, a part of you that's still tender from something that happened years ago. And when it lands there, it's like they're not just talking about the situation in front of you, they're talking to every version of you that's ever felt misunderstood, disrespected, or small. That's why it feels so heavy. That's why you walk away still thinking about it hours later, wondering why you can't just let it go. We like to think we're reacting to the present, but most of the time we're reacting to the story we've been carrying around for a long time. If someone calls you lazy and deep down you've always worked hard to prove your worth, it's gonna sting more. If they accuse you of being selfish and you've spent years putting everyone else first, that's gonna feel unfair. It's not just about them, it's about what their words pull out of you. That's the part we have to recognize, because if we don't, we'll keep trying to control what they say instead of learning how to control what we hear. The truth is, you can't stop people from saying things that hurt. Even if you explain yourself, even if you defend yourself, even if you prove them wrong, they can still choose to say it again. And if your peace depends on their behavior, you're giving them the keys to it. That's why the work is on your side of the conversation, not theirs. It's learning to separate the noise from the truth. It's asking yourself, is this actually about me, or is this about them? Most of the time, the answer is it's about them. Their words are a reflection of their own frustration, their own limits, their own way of seeing the world. When you start looking at it that way, something shifts. Instead of feeling like you have to take on their judgment, you start to see it as information about where they are, not where you are. You begin to recognize that not every comment deserves a response, and not every opinion needs to be corrected. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. You're choosing to respond from a place of control instead of emotion, and that changes everything. Sometimes the best thing you can do in that moment is pause. Not to stay quiet out of fear, but to give yourself a second to decide if what you're about to say will help or hurt the outcome. That pause is powerful. It puts you back in charge. And even if they keep talking, even if they try to pull you into the same back and forth you've had before, you'll know you're not standing in the same place you used to. The goal isn't to never feel hurt. It's to stop letting their words decide how you feel about yourself. Once you know where the real weight is coming from, you can put it down. And when you do, their words might still reach your ears, but they won't reach you. When someone knows exactly how to get a reaction out of you, it's rarely by accident. Whether they mean to or not, they've learned your triggers over time, what makes your voice rise, what makes your chest tighten, what makes you feel like you have to defend yourself. And once those buttons are pushed, it's like your brain goes into overdrive. You're not just reacting to them, You're reacting to every other moment you felt that same frustration, that same disrespect, that same need to be heard. It's hard to think clearly in that space because your body is already in defense mode before your mind has had a chance to catch up. Here's what most people don't realize: staying calm doesn't mean you're not affected. It doesn't mean you're pretending their words don't bother you. It means you've decided that you're not going to hand them control over your emotions. That's a choice, and it's one you can make even in the heat of the moment. But it takes practice, because our natural instinct when we're provoked is to meet fire with fire. And the truth is, that's exactly what some people are hoping for. They want the reaction because it gives them a sense of control too. The real shift happens when you stop giving them the reaction they expect. That doesn't mean you stay silent and take it. It means you slow down enough to choose your words, your tone, your posture. You start to see their behavior for what it is, a pattern, and patterns lose their power when they're met with something different. Instead of escalating, you're redirecting. Instead of letting their tone dictate yours, you're setting the temperature for the conversation. One practical way to do this is to give yourself a moment of space, not physical space, although that can help, but mental space. When you feel that button get pushed, focus on your breathing before you focus on your reply. It sounds simple, but that pause gives your brain a chance to move from reaction to response. You're telling yourself, I decide how I show up here, and that's a powerful reminder. Because if you speak from a place of calm, you're not just protecting your own peace, you're also making it harder for them to pull you into the same argument you've had 100 times before. And here's the thing, you're going to get it wrong sometimes. You'll still react. You'll still feel your patience slip. That's human. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Each time you catch yourself before snapping back, you're building a skill that will serve you in every relationship you have. You're showing yourself that you can be in the middle of someone else's storm without letting it become your own. Staying calm when someone pushes your buttons isn't about being passive. It's about being intentional. It's about deciding that your self-control matters more than winning the moment. Because when the moment passes, you'll remember how you carried yourself far longer than you'll remember what you said in the heat of it. And that quiet strength, that's what truly changes the game. One of the hardest things to accept is that you don't owe everyone an explanation for your choices. We grow up learning to explain ourselves to teachers, to parents, to friends, because it feels like that's how we get understanding or approval. But as adults, that habit can start working against us. We can find ourselves over-explaining, not because someone truly needs the context, but because we're afraid of what they'll think if we don't give it. And when you do that enough, you start to hand away pieces of your peace just to manage someone else's opinion. Here's the truth: not everyone is entitled to know the why behind your decisions. Some people will ask because they care, and explaining to them might be part of a healthy relationship. But others will ask as a way of poking holes, testing your confidence, or trying to get you to second-guess yourself. In those moments, giving an explanation doesn't build connection. It feeds their control. It tells them they have the right to approve or disapprove of your choices, when in reality, they don't. It's not about being secretive or shutting people out. It's about being selective. You can be kind without oversharing. You can be polite without opening the door to every detail of your reasoning. Sometimes the most respectful thing you can say is, "This is what I've decided," and leave it there. That's not cold. That's clarity. You're drawing a line that says, I am responsible for my choices, and I'm okay if you don't fully understand them. Explaining usually comes from wanting to avoid conflict. You think if you can give enough detail, they'll see it your way, and the tension will go away. But the people who truly respect you don't need paragraphs to honor your decision. And the people who don't respect you won't be convinced no matter how much you say. So instead of spending your energy trying to win them over, spend it standing steady in the choice you've made. When you stop over-explaining, you give yourself the gift of trust. Trust in your own judgment, trust in your own values, trust that you can live with your decision, even if someone else doesn't like it. That's what makes your boundaries stronger. You're no longer putting your self-worth up for debate. Every time someone raises an eyebrow or asks, "Why would you do that?" you're reminding yourself that the life you're building doesn't require a permission slip from anyone else. And yes, at first it might feel uncomfortable. You'll be tempted to fill the silence after you say no. You'll want to add, because, and start defending yourself. That's normal. It's a habit. But with time, that quiet confidence will start to feel more natural. You'll realize that the people who matter most don't need all the details to support you. And the people who need all the details aren't always the ones you should be trying to keep close. The more you practice it, the more you'll see that explanations can be a gift, but they're not an obligation. And giving them only when it's healthy keeps both your decisions and your peace exactly where they belong with you. Silence can feel uncomfortable, especially in the middle of a tense conversation. Most of us are taught to fill it, to explain, to defend, to smooth things over, because we think if we keep talking, we can fix what's wrong. But there's a quiet strength in letting silence do the work for you. When you stop rushing to respond, you give the other person's words room to sit in the air. You let them hear themselves without the distraction of your reaction. And sometimes that's when the truth starts to land, not because you argued harder, but because you didn't argue at all. The power of silence isn't about ignoring someone or shutting down. It's about choosing not to match their energy when that energy would only make things worse. If someone is coming at you with accusations, sarcasm, or an attempt to bait you into a fight, the instinct is to meet them in that same place. But that's exactly how the conversation spins out of control. By pausing, by letting your words come slower, or not at all, you're breaking the pattern. You're showing them and yourself that you're not going to be pulled into the same cycle that's played out 100 times before. Silence also gives you the space to process what's actually happening. In the heat of the moment, it's easy to react to tone instead of content, to take offense before you've even decided if what they said was worth taking personally. That quiet moment lets you ask yourself, is this about me or is this about them? Most of the time, the answer shifts the way you see the entire exchange. Without that pause, you don't get the chance to find out, you just react. There's another side to silence that's just as important. It can be a boundary without having to declare one out loud. You don't have to announce, I'm not going to argue with you. You simply choose not to engage in the parts of the conversation that cross a line. That doesn't mean you're avoiding the hard topics. It means you're refusing to have them in a destructive way. You're signaling through your calm and your quiet that you won't match disrespect with more disrespect. Sometimes the silence isn't for them at all. It's for you. It's a moment to check in with your own emotions before you let them out into the room. It's a chance to make sure that when you do speak, your words actually serve the conversation instead of satisfying a moment of anger. That kind of restraint doesn't make you weaker. It makes you harder to rattle. The more you practice letting silence do the work, the more you realize you don't have to win every point in real time. You don't have to rush to prove you're right or make sure they understand you. You can let your steady presence speak for itself. And when you do, you'll find that the quiet you once thought was empty is actually full of self-control, full of clarity, and full of the respect you're showing yourself by not giving away your peace so easily. Walking away can feel like giving up. We're taught to stand our ground, to finish the conversation, to make sure we're understood before we leave. But there are moments in relationships, whether it's with family, friends, or coworkers, where the strongest move you can make is to step back. Not because you're weak, not because you're afraid, but because you know the direction things are headed, and you refuse to let it take you with it. Walking away in those moments isn't quitting. It's protecting what matters most, your peace, your dignity, and the relationship you have with yourself. It's easy to think, if I just say one more thing, they'll finally get it. But if the conversation has already turned into a loop of accusations, defensiveness, or raised voices, adding more words rarely fixes it. In fact, it usually makes it worse. Walking away is a way of breaking that loop. It's saying, without saying, I'm not going to keep feeding this fire. And in a world where we're constantly told to fight for our point, it takes far more strength to stop than to keep swinging. Sometimes walking away isn't about the moment, it's about the pattern. Maybe you've had this same argument with this same person so many times you can predict their next sentence. Maybe you've tried every angle to be heard, and you leave every conversation feeling drained. When that's the case, walking away isn't just ending a fight, it's breaking a cycle. It's refusing to let the same unhealthy dynamic replay over and over at the cost of your mental and emotional well-being. Of course, walking away doesn't mean slamming the door and disappearing forever, unless that's truly what's needed for your safety or sanity. Most of the time, it's about creating space in the heat of the moment so you can come back to the conversation with a clearer head. It's saying, I need to pause here so we don't do more damage, instead of pushing through and regretting what gets said. That's not avoidance, that's maturity. You're taking responsibility for how you show up, even if the other person isn't doing the same. And here's the hard part. People won't always like it when you walk away. They might accuse you of shutting down, of not caring, of trying to win by leaving. That's where your self-trust comes in. You have to know that you're not walking away to punish them. You're walking away to protect yourself. You can't control how they interpret it, but you can control why you do it and how you do it. Calmly, without sarcasm, without slamming doors, just a steady choice to remove yourself from something that isn't going anywhere good. The truth is, walking away takes courage. It's hard to let go of the need to get the last word, to be right, to make them see your side. But when you choose to leave instead of letting the conversation tear at your patience or your self-respect, you're making a decision that says, my peace matters more than my pride. And that, in the end, is one of the strongest moves you can ever make. Protecting your peace doesn't mean building walls so high that no one can get close to you. It's not about shutting people out, avoiding every hard conversation, or pretending you don't care. It's about creating a healthy distance between yourself and the things that drain you. Without losing your warmth, your empathy, or your ability to connect, the challenge is that when you start protecting your peace, some people might see it as you being cold. And if you've always been the one who listens, fixes, or makes room for everyone else's emotions, that shift can feel uncomfortable. Not just for them, but for you too. The truth is, you can set boundaries and still be kind. You can say no without shutting someone down. The difference is in your intention and your delivery. Being cold is about pushing people away to keep yourself safe. Protecting your peace is about staying connected on your terms, showing up for people in ways that don't leave you resentful or burned out. That means knowing when to step in and when to step back. It means being honest about what you can give and what you can't, instead of overextending and then quietly pulling away. One of the best ways to do this is to communicate early instead of waiting until you're already frustrated. If you know you can't take on a certain conversation right now, you can say, I want to give this the attention it deserves, but I can't do that at this moment. Can we talk later? That's not cold. That's considerate. You're respecting your own limits while also respecting the other person's need to be heard. When you wait until you're at your breaking point, your boundaries come out sharp. When you set them early, they come out calm. Another part of protecting your peace without turning cold is remembering that empathy doesn't mean absorbing everything someone else is feeling. You can care deeply about what someone's going through without taking it on as your own. That might mean listening without offering solutions or letting them sit in their feelings without rushing to fix them. It's about understanding that their emotions are theirs to carry and yours are yours. That space between the two is where your peace lives. You'll also find that tone matters. A simple no can sound like a rejection if it's said flatly, but if you add a little more humanity, I can't right now, but I hope it goes well. Or, I wish I could, but I can't commit to that. You keep the door to the relationship open. People might still be disappointed, but they won't feel dismissed, and you'll walk away knowing you stayed true to yourself without shutting down the connection. Protecting your peace isn't about hardening your heart. It's about keeping it open in a sustainable way. When you learn how to set boundaries with warmth, you stop swinging between overgiving and pulling away. You stay present without being consumed, compassionate without being drained. And that balance is where both you and your relationships can actually breathe, it's natural to want people to think well of you. We all want to be liked, respected, and understood. But somewhere along the way, that healthy desire for connection can turn into something heavier, measuring your worth by what someone else thinks of you. And the problem with that is simple: opinions shift. They shift with moods, with misunderstandings, with someone's own struggles that have nothing to do with you. If you let their opinion define you, you're putting the most personal part of yourself, your identity, in the hands of something that can change at any moment. Sometimes it's not even a stranger's opinion that gets to you. It's the people closest to you. A friend's disappointment, a parent's disapproval, a partner's criticism. Those words can cut deep because they're coming from someone who knows you well. But even then, their perspective is still limited. They see you through their own experiences, their own expectations, their own biases. They might love you and still not fully understand you. And that's okay. It's not their job to define you. That's yours. The tricky part is that opinions often feel like truth in the moment, especially if they hit a sensitive spot you already question about yourself. If you've ever doubted whether you're good enough, it doesn't take much for a careless comment to confirm that fear in your mind. That's where self-awareness matters. Instead of taking their opinion as a verdict, pause and ask yourself, does this line up with who I actually am? Or does it just line up with my fear? That small shift takes the weight out of their words and puts the focus back on your own judgment. This doesn't mean you stop listening to feedback. Feedback can be valuable, but it should be filtered, not swallowed whole. You get to decide which parts help you grow and which parts you leave behind. If someone points out something you truly need to work on, you can take that in without making it your whole identity. And if someone's opinion is clearly more about them than it is about you, you can let it pass without carrying it with you. It also means remembering that people can be wrong about you. They can misinterpret your intentions. They can judge you based on a single moment without knowing the whole story. If you let every one of those moments define you, you'll spend your life constantly reshaping yourself to fit other people's views. And the more you do that, the further you drift from who you actually are. Your worth isn't up for a vote. It's built from the values you live by, the actions you take, and the way you treat people, including yourself. When you know that, you can hear someone's opinion without letting it rewrite your self-image. You can respect their right to have a perspective without giving it the power to tell you who you are. And that's the freedom you find when you remember their opinion might be loud, but it's not the final word. You are. Most arguments don't start with the big blow up. They start with something small. A tone, a comment, a look. It's that tiny spark that catches on something dry in both people, and before you know it, you're in the middle of a fight that feels way bigger than whatever started it. The shift that stops arguments before they start isn't about controlling the other person. It's about catching that spark early and deciding you're not going to give it the fuel it needs to turn into a fire. That takes awareness, and it takes humility, because it means choosing connection over being right in that moment. A lot of us react before we even know we're reacting. Someone says something we don't like, and our defenses are already up. Our voice changes, our posture changes. We start thinking about how to respond instead of actually hearing what's being said. And here's the thing, once both people are in that mode, it's no longer about solving the problem. It's about winning. That's why so many small disagreements turn into big arguments. The focus shifts from the issue to the battle. The shift happens when you recognize that moment in yourself. The moment you feel your chest tighten, your tone sharpen, your patience start to slip, and you choose to slow down instead of speed up. You take a breath. You remind yourself that not everything needs an immediate comeback. You ask yourself, do I want to be understood or do I want to be right? Because the truth is, you can win the point and still lose the relationship in that exchange. Sometimes stopping an argument before it starts is as simple as acknowledging what's really going on beneath the surface. If you can say, I'm starting to feel defensive, or that comment hit me wrong, you give the other person a chance to adjust before things escalate. It's not about making them responsible for your feelings. It's about letting them know where you're at so you don't end up in a place you'll both regret. Another part of the shift is learning when to let something go. Not every comment needs to be challenged. Not every misunderstanding needs to be corrected in real time. That doesn't mean you ignore things that matter. It means you choose your moments wisely. Sometimes the best way to protect a relationship is to address something later when both of you are calmer and more open to listening. And yes, this takes practice. You won't always catch it in time. There will be moments where you realize you're already halfway into the argument before you even think about stepping back. That's okay. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Every time you do catch it, every time you choose to slow down, you're building a habit that makes the next time easier. The shift that stops arguments before they start isn't about being passive. It's about being intentional. It's choosing to create space for clarity instead of chaos. And when you do that, you're not just avoiding unnecessary fights, you're building trust, keeping respect intact, and making it easier for both of you to actually hear each other. There are people who will test you, not always out of malice, but because of their own pain, their own insecurities, or their own need to feel in control. They push your buttons, question your worth, or say things designed to get a reaction. And here's the truth: if they can get you to explode, lose your footing, or turn into someone you're not proud of, they win. Not because they were right, but because they pulled you out of the steady place you worked so hard to build. Staying steady when someone tries to shake you isn't about pretending you're not hurt. It's about choosing not to let their storm pull you under. The real battle isn't between you and them. It's between the version of you that reacts and the version of you that responds. Reacting is easy. It's instant. They say something cutting and your words are already forming to fire back. Responding, though, that's strength. That's the pause, the breath, the mental step back where you ask yourself, is what I'm about to say going to help, or is it just going to make things worse? When someone tries to shake you, it often reveals more about them than it does about you. A person at peace with themselves doesn't need to tear others down. A person confident in who they are doesn't have to provoke. That perspective doesn't make their behavior okay, but it helps you not take their actions as a personal reflection of your value. Their words are a mirror of where they're at, not a verdict on who you are. Steadiness doesn't mean silence. It means you choose your words with intention. Sometimes that means calmly setting a boundary. I'm not okay with being spoken to like that. Sometimes it's removing yourself from the conversation altogether. And sometimes it's recognizing that engaging at all will only give them the reaction they're looking for, so you don't take the bait. That's not weakness, it's control. In real life, this is harder than it sounds. Your body will want to defend itself. Your emotions will rise up fast. You might feel the heat in your face, the tightness in your chest. This is the moment you need to anchor yourself. You remind yourself that you don't answer to their mood. You ground yourself in what you know is true about you, even if they're trying to rewrite that story in the moment. Here's the thing: when you can stay steady in those moments, you don't just protect your peace, you protect your dignity. You walk away without having to clean up words you wish you could take back. You leave the situation knowing you stayed in control of you, and that's a quiet kind of victory. The more you practice this, the less power those button pushers will have over you. Not because they've changed, but because you have. You stop letting other people decide how you show up. You stop giving your emotional steering wheel to someone who doesn't have your best interest at heart. And in doing that, you stay grounded, even when the world or someone in it is trying to knock you off balance. Sometimes the loudest statement you can make is the one you don't speak at all. In a world that rewards quick comebacks and meeting fire with fire, choosing not to react can feel like weakness. But in reality, it's one of the most powerful moves you have. When someone comes at you, whether with criticism, sarcasm, or a deliberate jab, they're not just throwing words. They're inviting you into a dynamic where they control the pace and tone. And the moment you jump in without thinking, you hand over your peace, your focus, and your power. Not reacting isn't about pretending you're unaffected. It's about deciding you won't play by rules that drag you down. In relationships, whether it's with a partner, family member, coworker, or friend, conflict can quickly spiral when both sides feel the need to win. The moment, you might be right, You might have the perfect point that would shut them down, but ask yourself what happens next. Will it move you toward understanding, or will it just lock you both deeper into defense mode? Sometimes not reacting in the heat of the moment says, I value the bigger picture more than this argument. It's a way of communicating without words that you won't let the situation pull you out of character. There's also something disarming about stillness. People expect pushback. They expect a rise out of you. When you don't give it, the dynamic shifts. It removes the fuel they were counting on to keep the fire going. And while they might interpret your silence however they want in that moment, the truth is your restraint speaks volumes. It says you have self-control. It says you're not operating from impulse. It says you know the difference between what's worth your energy and what's not. Of course, choosing not to react doesn't mean you never address the issue. It means you wait until the emotional charge has settled, both yours and theirs. You create space for clarity, because clarity rarely shows up in the middle of a shouting match or a defensive back and forth. When you do speak, you speak from a grounded place, not from the corner they tried to push you into. That shift can change the outcome entirely. This takes discipline. Your instinct might scream, say something, prove your point. Don't let them get away with that. But here's what's really happening when you resist that pull. You're protecting your future self from regret. You're sparing yourself the weight of words you can't take back. You're choosing long-term peace over short-term satisfaction. And that choice builds a quiet kind of strength. One that doesn't need to be announced to be real. The next time someone tries to provoke you, remember their words only have as much life as you give them. If you choose stillness, you're not losing. You're deciding the conversation won't happen on their terms. You're keeping your dignity intact. And in the silence, you're sending a message far louder than any reaction could. One that says, I know my worth, and I'm not handing it over just because you want me to.